Hello everyone, it has officially started. Today is the first day of me reading to you guys my book, The Chronicles of House 9, Druid Born, which is the first book of my series. So please enjoy, but first, the copyright. Copyright. All work in this video from our audio written book belongs to the original writer artist, me, Wyona A.M. This video is for entertainment purposes only. To contact the original artist, aka me, for use of products shown or heard in video, contact either me through my YouTube channel at Wyom x3 vlog, my Instagram at Wyom x3, or my Twitter account at mx3_WA. I also have a Facebook page under Wyom x3, WAMX3. The program that I use to edit this video is Adobe Premiere Elements 2020. Now that is over with, let's get started, shall we? Chapter 1, The Master of the Mansion. The mansion was ancient, and not in the creepy, spooky, filled with ghosts kind. No, it was filled with the old worldly, speaking of peace like someone who had seen the darkest of moments, but also the best of miracles. It had been filled with the richest of lives, seen in luxurious balls, the ones where the women are dressed in layers of silks and lace. The men wore knee-high stockings paired with petticoats, and of course everyone wore those ridiculous powdered wigs. Its courtyard had carriages of all shapes and sizes, the horses' hoofs hitting polished stones with a clop of pleasure. The trees were filled with ripe fruits of all kinds, from apples to sweetest of oranges. Rose bushes trimmed to make a maze that led to all sorts of surprises. Music filled the air, and the perfume of the night teased your senses. Now, sadly, the mansion could only speak of these times. It sat dark and empty, hidden from the sunlight by the thick vines that hadn't been kept at bay in centuries. The bushes grew wild and untamed, the fruit trees hung with pain, an odor of rotting wood mixed with the decaying fruit and the water in the fountain that now looked more like a bog. The courtyard was in great need of repairs and construction as it slowly turned into dust. The large wooden door creaked open to a room that once was filled with light and laughter, now was dressed in a thick fog of dust and ashes. The place smelled of the warmth now long forgotten. The rooms whispered of secrets about those who now long since went into the other world. The stairs spoke of being polished with the finest of oils. The floors gossiped about the expensive carpets of foreign golden threads. The paintings that once dressed a white wall were now torn, broken. The paint peeling and mold was taken over. The library long since had been claimed by a village of mice, and the kitchen had been taken by vines creeping in through the broken bay windows. The only light that pierced the dark Victorian was silvers of gray from the windows and holes throughout the mansion. The floors protested at any weight, making you time your steps carefully. The chill hung in the air with the eerie silence. A mouse scurried across the floor as a light at the end of the hall drew one's attention. The master bedroom was the only room untouched. The sheets and linens were clean and dressed in silk of green, waiting for the master of the house to rest his head. The fireplace had coals that were still glowing. Soft warmth hung in the crisp air. The walls had fabric on them, like in the old days, with a dark green shade with real gold thread making swirled leaf design. Real wood polished floors, black thick curtains on the window and around the bed. On one side sat an alcove where a grand piano sat surrounded by music and books going far back into history. A masculine, feminine smell lingered in the air. It heightened the senses and aroused the core. Didn't anyone tell you to knock before entering someone's home? She turned half-stunned to the spot as the voice out of a long-forgotten dream came to life. Two piercing green eyes stared back at her. He was of Irish Asian descent, with exotic green eyes that set cold against olive skin and dark red waves that ended into a light strawberry blonde cut just above shoulder length, framed the face of a young man. No, not a boy. He must have been in his 20s or early 30s, but no boy. He was dressed in a pair of black pants and a white button-up shirt that was only done halfway, revealing a sculpted chest dressed with gold scars. At first glance he seemed human until you started to realize that those green eyes held a fierceness of a prey who had eyed its next victim. The way he moved was more like a wild cat, even leaning against the door jamb so casually like strangers wandered off the streets into his house all the time. But he could strike at any moment like a snake coiled at the ready. This was the master of the mansion. The problem wasn't that she found herself in the presence of the most gorgeous being ever to behold, nor the fact that she walked through a seemingly abandoned mansion with only one room untouched, or even the fact that she was in the presence of an ancient predator. No, it was that she recognized him. It was like walking from reality into a long-forgotten dream or memory. Was this a hallucination? Sure, she had had the same feeling when she walked into the abandoned courtyard, but that had to do with her powers. They weren't much but things, places, objects. They liked to speak to her, glad to have someone to listen. It was all she had, and the only clue to heritage was the small silver locket that hung from her thin neck. The reason she was here was because of this heritage. She could also see things that normal humans could not see, and she no longer wished to see those nightmares. She moistened her lips. His eyes flashed there briefly before returning to her eyes. She was hypnotized to the spot with those two green emeralds. "Are you Laito Urtagi?" She started unsurely with a bit of nervousness, not fear, no. She was not scared to die. "Nick? The troll? Sent me?" she said, holding out a white envelope to him, her hand shaking slightly. He watched her, the way her small breast lifted against the thin old fabric of the tank top and sweatshirt she wore. Her jeans were torn and dirty. Her hair was in a messy bun, like it hadn't been brushed or washed in quite some time. She smelled like the earth, and she was also, he found himself thinking while his eyes narrowed, too skinny. Death hung over her like an old friend stopping by for a visit, but it was her unusual violet eyes that caught his attention. He took the envelope, stepping from a foot away to inches in front of her with one step. He noted she did not gasp nor flinch. She knew what he was, without even trying, and she hoped, if he did decide to feed, he would just finish her off like God or goddess or whoever decided these things didn't seem to be able to do. She did not act with fear or curiosity. She stayed neutral in both posture and emotion. Her thoughts were strange, too. She didn't think like a normal human, but that had brought much sadness to her life than good. Her powers were rare, not powerful, no, but rare. He found her quite interesting, to be honest. He also could make good use of such powers as he watched his unusual purple eyes turn almost completely red before she blinked and they returned to the purple with a hint of gold in the center. "You look hungry," he said, looking up from reading the message, "and you could use a good soak." His voice wasn't masculine nor feminine, but a perfect combination of the two. He had no accent, no hint of his origins except for his exotic features. He walked past her and into another room. His smell lingered in the air around her as the sound of water came from an adjoining room, the master bathroom. "I will start dinner while you soak," he gestured when he left the other room and out the door. "But I'm supposed to return," she tried. No answer. The bathroom was a decent size. A bathtub was backed up as a hot tub set against the wall. A walk-in shower with two different kinds of shower heads, and a small side room that led to the toilet with a door for extra privacy. The bathtub was filled with bubbles and bath salt. Didn't she just walk through an abandoned mansion? But then again, vampires did hide in places such as this. No point in fighting it, she thought, easing out of her old clothes. If she was raped or eaten or both, it didn't matter anymore. She took it slow into the bathtub, so not to slip and reopen her wounds that Nicholas took so much time to close for her. When she left the tub, she found that her clothes had been replaced. They were men clothes and a little too large, but they were clean and dry. The air was filled with the smell of stew and fresh garlic bread. The girl followed the smell, finding the ruined mansion she had walked through moments ago had been refurbished. A spell, and she hadn't seen through it? She walked through halls where the paintings now sat on the dark wooden walls. Women, children, men, and sceneries, all originals. The library was untouched, all the books hidden safely behind glass, and the smell of old writers and faint smoke filled the air. The carpets were thick and made out of red and gold threads of the finest quality. The floors and walls were polished, and green pots with lush plants decorated the rooms, and a bright light filled the mansion through glass cut in diamond shapes and of various colors, sending rainbows on the floors and walls. The mansion was done in pre-Victorian. Even the furniture, none of it was a rip-off or a look-alike. Touching the walls and furniture, all of it, telling her their secrets and how the master of the mansion took good care of them. He had added the modesties, like running water, electricity, and AC, but the warmth was still from the large fireplaces set on every floor. She continued to follow the smell into the kitchen that was made for times when there was a large party, not a meal for two. Lito, at least that's who she assumed he was, stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot. The black granite countertop, made for both looks and cutting, was dressed with 2 sets of spoons, bowls, and glasses of water, and a plate of garlic bread. Lito looked her over with a solemn face and shrugged. Better. He poured the stew into the bowls as the girls took a seat before returning to the stove. So tell me, little bitch, what has brought you to my mansion? He asked, holding his glass of water in his hand. Gold, silver, and a blue sapphire winked at her from his long fingers that ended in long, almost claw-like nails. She also noticed he had 2 earrings in the top half of his left ear, along with diamond studs in his earlobes. His lip was also decorated with a beauty mark on the lower right. He was a creature of the night. Angel looks to attract the prey to him. She admired him while she pondered his question, not sure how to truly answer it. You said Nicholas sent you, and in his message, he said you were in need of help, but not of what kind. Actually, it had said that she was being chased by the wolf one, but he hated doing favors. If she wanted his help, then she would damn well ask for it herself. He also wouldn't mind betting her, only she was way too skinny for his taste at the moment. I need a spell. Not a lie, but not quite the truth either. And what could you offer me in return? Blood, she found herself thinking in horror. I can clean and cook and give you blood. She found herself not being able to finish. I have plenty of food in this city, he answered. Her unsaid answer. How long, if I may, have you lived on the streets? She looked down then. Strands of black hair covered her face like a shield. No, they were not black. Now she was queen. They were dark brown with gold and red that danced through the natural waves. Her hair reminded him of raven feathers reflecting the light. Her skin was sun-kissed. White scars, and not all human-made, dressed her skin. Fresh cuts were on her wrists, showing how desperate she was for death. They weren't the only fresh wounds, though. Too much of the smell of fresh blood to be the only cuts. Despite the bash, she still smelled of the earth like it was branded into her bones. There was something else that danced through her veins, laughing about the secrets it held. Why are you here? He set the glass down, finally not willing to play human any longer. She knew what he was. It was laughably obvious to her. Because I need a spell and will do anything. She didn't look up, but he heard the shame. There was also something else there, but her wrist proved what it was. What is your name, little bitch? It was strange being called that by someone who couldn't have been much older than her. Then again, he wasn't human, and the way the mansion spoke, he grew up in this mansion, and not in the last 20 or so years. Of course, normally vampires did have modesty, except this one apparently. Kelly face, she managed, and that was definitely a lie. He bit a growl back. Your birth name. And don't even think about lying to me again, unless you like being called little bitch. Then again, you females are always bitches in the end. He sighed with impatience, looking out the large bay windows with their rainbow-cut glass decorating the edges. She flinched and froze. Even her heartbeat slowed before it began to race. Look, if you want my help, you need to speak the truth. I do not bother with those who lie. He swung his arms for dramatics. Especially about whom and what they are, he growled with impatience before standing to start cleaning the table. I don't know who or what I am. He stopped and turned towards her. He knew she was speaking the truth. I've had to change it often, but my family name is... She trailed off, then took a deep breath, whispering, Enia and Baria, Gach, Lime, Lis, and Dragon. She said it so quietly, even if it wasn't for his high-pitched hearing, he would have missed it. It was an old name, and not many knew the true meaning behind the name. Translated, the first half of her name meant daughter of the moon, and the second meant child of the dragon. It was meant to be literal. In other words, her mother was the moon, or one of the children of the moon at least, and her father had been a dragon. It was an ancient name for an ancient bloodline. Yes, humans used it often, however, they did not realize the meanings behind the words. It was a language of magic that ran through every single vein of each letter. Her name not only explained her birthright, but also a protection, a warning to those who wished her harm. He had met a child of the moon before, a witch who his father had given shelter to. They were rare and to be protected. That's what his father always told him. Now Leito understood why Nicholas sent this child to him. Only a pure boy could give this child the true protection she needed in order to gain the full strength of her heritage. Others would be drawn to her, creatures of the night, of myths and legends. They would be drawn to the ancient magic that flowed through her veins. It was even hard for him not to taste that sweet blood. He swallowed and tried breathing through his mouth instead of his nose, but humans would also be drawn, and they were stupid when it came to things like this. The witch trials were proof of that enough. The vampire prince looked at the girl very closely. Her eyes stared back, pleading and scared. She was not scared of him, but of what she was. Those eyes were ancient, not the eyes of a young teenage girl. Eyes that could see what something or someone truly was. Even now they swam with hues of purples and blues as her powers viewed past the mask, and saw the true creature underneath. He was a pureblood, and his true skin was that of a predator so ancient that humans had forgotten how dangerous they could truly be. It had been decades since the last time he viewed such a rare human as her, and he himself was very young at that time, a mere boy. They weren't even mentioned in myths and legends anymore, but he had not forgotten the ancient word for her breed of human. The closest humans had for creatures such as these were witches, wizards, even druid, but it never explained what their true nature was. "You said you could help me," she said, a bit of fierceness in her voice he was not expecting. He smirked at the bit of fire. "What exactly are you looking for, little bitch? Protection? A teacher? Or a dark lover, perhaps?" He allowed his accent to come through, his words dancing over her skin, through her veins to her very core. A voice that not a normal human could say no to. Even others found it hard to ignore that voice that entered your very mind, to your heart and soul. He could read her thoughts, her memories of pain and darkness, but it was strange they were guarded even from her. There was blankness there, many memories erased or long forgotten. No one knew how long these rare humans could live. Most were killed, while others vanished into time. She shook her head shamefully. "I don't want this," she breathed, shuddering at the effort of saying the words. She didn't truly want to get rid of her powers, her abilities given to her as a gift from the goddess herself. She was scared, and those around her hadn't helped in the situation at all. She was a lone wolf for a reason, not trusting any living soul or dead soul for that matter. "Can you help me with this? Please?" She looked at him, tears starting to fall. No, she would not cry. She was too proud to cry. "I just want to be normal again." "But you've never been normal." She bit her lip. Just that alone sent a wave of tingling heat down his spine to his core. God, she did things to him that no one had ever been able to do. He breathed through the temptation of either slamming her onto the counter and fucking her brains out, or drinking every last drop of that ancient blood. Or even both. His eyes darkened at the thought. This miracle of a being set before him and begged to be rid of her gifts. It was rare to be able to see behind the mask, but even rarer to see what death could bring. She had seen terrible things. She had seen terrible things as a young child, and no longer was it ever again. Then again, the goddess had blessed her with such gifts for a reason, and he would not destroy someone's destiny for being scared of their true nature. He knew what it meant to be scared of your true nature, but no matter what, you had to embrace it. "It will be expensive, and take several times. You could die. It is not easy to take back a gift from the goddess, and he hated doing it. It was not worth the effort." She took the silver chain off of her neck and placed it on the table before him, leaving only that ridiculous silver cross with small red rubies as decoration. But he had a feeling that she didn't wear it because of her faith. Leito looked down at the locket, finding a good look at the small little piece of silver. It held a small locket in the shape of an egg, a blue stone carved from a moonstone paired with a tree of life and a Celtic knot. To the untrained eye, that's how it looked anyway. It was not made by human or other. Ancient words of protection hidden by Celtic knots were carved around the edges, but to anyone else they were just swirls and carvings for decoration. It was another proof of her heritage, much like her ancient name. "Will this be enough?" He closed his eyes. A migraine began to pound. He squeezed the brow of his nose and took a few deep breaths, holding in the anger. She didn't mean to offend him by this. She didn't truly know the ancient ways and what it meant by trying to give up a piece of yourself. She had been raised by humans in a cage that taught her she should be ashamed of what she truly was. These times were hard on their young. It was hard even for creatures like him who passed through time and space, adapting easily like it was a passing fancy. He occupied himself by finishing cleaning off the counter and doing the dishes, putting leftovers in a plastic container and putting it into the fridge, trying from the girl in her offering. "You can have my blood as well." He had to bite his tongue to keep from growling with anger. Was this what this time was doing to their young, shown them to the point of suicide to be rid of their heritage so badly? This time was darker than any he had ever seen. Humanity itself was an endangered species. No humans were stronger than ever, but empathy for both their kind and others was disappearing and fast. The ability to accept the strange and unusual was more than a simple whisper. They forgot to be thankful to the goddess and made her sick with their greed. But what they had forgotten was the most important. The goddess gave life, but she could also take it away just as easily. "Please!" She stood fast, too fast, and the smell of blood filled the air. When he glanced at her, he saw the fresh blood spreading through the fabric of his white button-up shirt she wore. Larry moved in a whirl, grabbed the small girl, and threw her onto the empty cabin. Pinning her with his strength and weight, she squeaked with surprise, but did not scream or tremble with fear. She waited for death, opening her arms to it. This only angered him more. "It is not that easy to kill you, little bitch," he stated, and as she opened her eyes, she found herself looking into the glowing eyes of a vampire, old, pure. No, he had never been human. He was born a predator of the night. He found that he loved her eyes. He allowed himself to admit, much like the night being taken by the sunrise. Lavender and gold in the center, surrounded by midnight blue, eyes that saw through the human flesh into the beast that lurked just below the surface, but she was not scared. No, she was intrigued, curious even. He could look into those eyes for eternity, he found himself thinking. "No, little bitch, I would not take your life nor your heritage," even though her sweet blood was tempting. Sadness, disappointment, regret shone through those eyes, but her face stayed neutral. "But I will do what your parents can no longer do for you." Her brows creased together in confusion. "You will live here, under mine and my brother's protection, and I will help you learn to control your gifts. You must go to school. You will not be allowed to leave until you are truly ready for the outside world. Fear, but not of him. In return, you will obey every command I give. Possibly get blood, if you so wish, but only to I and whoever I give permission." She went to say something, but he clamped his hand on her mouth. A small, delicate, kissable mouth. "This is what I will offer. You may take the time needed to consider, but don't wait too long because this offer is a one-time deal. Do you understand?" She nodded. "What a good little bitch." He kissed her forehead. She felt the magic an old ancient spell. "Now let's take care of those wounds." He picked her up easily, walking through the mansion with smooth, quick movements. He reminded her of a large jungle cat, graceful, quiet, fast, and deadly, but then again he was also like a wolf, quick, constantly changing, lonely though. He placed her on his bed, where she found herself surrounded by soft, comfortable feather-down bedding. Warmth filled the room as light stoked up the fire. He left briefly, returning with a silver tray of various bottles and liquids. Blues, pinks, greens, reds, even browns and blacks of all different shades filled the jars. Plants of so many different kinds of names she couldn't name, but recognized some like the moss, the ginger root, and leaves from various trees and other plants. He poured some of the liquids into a small cauldron and placed it over the fire while he cut up some of the herbs, plants, and roots. As the mixture cooked, filled the air with a strange, sweet smell, he prepared bandages, wrappings, and cotton swabs. "Take off the shirt," he ordered in a bell-like voice with a hint of command. He was not used to hearing the word no, or even listening to it, she concluded. Callie sat up and slowly took off her shirt, revealing scars and bruises made by both humans and non-humans. The most recent were the ones on her wrists, getting closer and closer to the mark, and the 3 long, deep gashes across her back, stomach, and side, which were bleeding all over the sheets. The body of the young girl was no more than skin and bone, the skin like light, tight leather. The shirt she handed him was soaked in blood, and she apologized. He threw the shirt into the fire. Next would be the bedding when he was done. She pressed her knees to her chest and wrapped her bony arms around them protectively, shivering. "Lay back," he said as he poured what was in the cauldron into a wooden bowl. She didn't move, debating about what he was about to do to her. "This needs to be applied to your wounds before infection gets in." No movement. He growled and grabbed her, flinging the small frame girl onto the bed easily. He lost patience with this shot. She flinched as he poured the liquid onto her wounds. A stinging sensation painfully ran through her body. She flinched, clenching her teeth and fisting the bedding, closing her eyes. Blood trickled down her chin, but she did not scream. She had at least some fight left in her, he thought, pleased. He took off his leather belt. Like this, so you don't hurt your teeth. Her small mouth opened and grabbed the leather between her teeth, clamping down on it hard. This liquid was not pleasant. It healed fast, which was why it was nice to keep in the ingredients handy. It took hours to clean, apply the liquid, and reclose the wounds with stitches. As he pieced her skin back together, the fever was already kicking in, turning her insides into a fiery volcano. Sweat lay on the top of her skin. Once in a while, beads of sweat would fall from their resting place. Leo caught one, not able to help himself, and tasted the saltiness of her. Sweet, salty, like a delicate dessert. He thought, licking his lips and catching another bead and licking around her belly button where a small puddle had collected. Her legs, to his amusement, clamped closed, and her arms set firmly across her breast, which only amused the vampire more. I need you to move your arm. She froze, but he took her wrist and moved her arm anyway. She tried to fight, but a scream almost escaped, and she gave in. Don't worry. I like my girls with a little more meat, he teased, quietly assuring himself that she would have both meat and muscles when he was done with her. After applying the liquid to her ribs and her wrists, wrapping them, he asked her if there were any more wounds. She hesitated, but then, taking into consideration she was already half naked and he hadn't taken advantage, yet at least. My leg, inside of the thigh. His long fingers went straight for the button and zipper, undoing them in practiced ease. He gently removed the pants, being greeted by the smell of fresh blood and a sweet arousal that touched his manhood. The gash started at the inside of her right thigh and trailed to the back of her leg, stopping under her buttocks, while another lay just below her knee. They were straight to the bone. How had she been able to walk, he wondered, going to refill the bowl. As he opened her legs and placed himself on the left for easy access to cut, he found that sweet perfume came from between her legs. Females did smell good, but this was even more tempting, like she was in heat and needed him. He breathed in the smell deeply, knowing he wasn't going to let her go so easily, and he definitely wouldn't share her, at least this part of her. I need to roll you over. She was very pale. Her arms were back protectively across her chest, which, considering where he was sitting, it made no sense whatsoever. She looked at him, her eyes light lavender. She managed a nod of understanding. He reluctantly left the sweet-smelling temptation and rolled her gently over onto her stomach. She held her breath, biting hard onto the leather belt as he rolled her over. She braced her against her upper arms and laid her head on the pillow, breathing deeply and slowly, her whole body trembling. His hands gently rubbed her back, more out of instinct, trying to give her some comfort. I'm almost done, little bitch, he soothed before he worked on her leg. By this point, she blacked out. Here, drink this, Leo said, bringing the girl to a sitting position and placing a glass of pink liquid in her hands. It looked like it would taste sweet, but it was bitter, and it took a lot to take a sip. As she took a second, his hand cupped the bottom and forced her to finish the glass. She coughed at the taste and almost puked, but more gagged because there was nothing in her system. His fingers massaged the back of her throat. You're cruel, she breathed through coughs. Yes, I can be, especially when you don't listen, his voice carrying a warning. Though I do like chains and leather, he mused. She blushed, and he couldn't help but chuckle, a laugh which did not match his features at all. He picked her up, placing her in the chair before quickly changing the bedding and washing his hands. Once the bedding was changed, he placed the girl back on the bed. Sleep now, little bitch, he said, lying her down and pressing a cold cloth to her forehead before moving to a chair by the fireplace. Everything was cleaned up, and a wine glass of dark red liquid set next to a book which he took in his lap and read quietly, drinking the liquid. She was pretty sure it was not wine in the glass. It was too thick and dark. Her mind went into a daze, and she fought at first, but soon darkness took her, and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. And that concludes my first chapter for my House of Nine Chronicles, Druid Born. I hope you guys enjoyed, and please look forward to many more videos coming your way. Bye!